Welcome to Real Estate Real World, where we talk to the movers, shakers, and leaders that are getting it done right now in the real estate industry and beyond. Your host, Marguerite Crespillo, started this podcast simply dedicated to call people about what's really happening in this crazy roller coaster ride of real estate. Be sure to subscribe on iTunes and stay up to date on the newest stuff by adding yourself to the list at www.realestaterealworld.com. Now your host, Marguerite Crespillo.
Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to Real Estate Real World. Today we have an extraordinarily special guest, a longtime friend of mine and an incredible human being. I'm going to read her stuff off here real quick. Coni is a crisis management and leadership strategist. Coni's purpose, commitment, and legacy is why she founded the CKM Preparedness Foundation to help communities be better prepared, more sustainable, and resilient. The initiatives are designed to bring communities together and have leaders do well by doing good. Her certifications, training, and initiatives are all designed to create community and involvement through their leaders so that she can help 30 million people be sustainable and prepared. She's a 6-time international best-selling author. When the Unthinkable Happens, Be Prepared, Be Ready, is a reference guide for consumers and businesses. She spent 7 years as a FEMA inspector and trainer, founded a national home inspection business, an online education company, and much more. Her entire life has been training for the work she's doing today. She's helped thousands with her executive leadership, marketing, and sales, and has 3 prestigious credentials. Thank you, and welcome, Coni.
Thank you so much for having me. And you did a great job with the bio. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Had some big words in there, got a little tongue twisted, but it was great. Well, you know what? I'm so glad you're here. We've had the opportunity to work together, not as much as we want to, but that's going to change over the last few years. And we originally met, correct me if I'm wrong, we met at Women Up, didn't we?
Yes, correct.
Yes. And
We
I
shared the booth
remember,
together.
yes, I remember clearly standing in that booth and you telling me what you were doing. And I was like, you have to do something with this. Like, this is absolutely essential. Like, it's critical to what is going on with, disaster and all those kinds of things. So tell me a little bit about what it is you've been doing and what you've created and what you're working on.
Well, for me, those 7 years as a FEMA inspector, I did over 50 disasters and trained hundreds of inspectors. And the one thing that I saw was that people just are not prepared, period. And when you look at where this was several years ago, this was back in the late 90s, early 2000s. Like I started, I think, in 1992, and I went to like 2001. And so things back then, you would think by now, 2022, we would be a little bit further down the road in being prepared. And especially when we really have to be dealing with sustainability, and we're not. And it's very interesting in that I've discovered that people don't want to think about it. It's kind of like thinking about writing a will. They don't want to think about a will because they have to think about dying. Well, people don't want to think about a disaster. And what's very interesting is in January of 2020, there was a study that was done by the International Institute of CPAs, and they found that 61%, and this is back before pandemic, 61% of Americans believed they were going to be affected by a disaster in the next 3 to 5 years. And only 15 to 30% had done anything, any kind of preparation. So I was studying the different organizations when the California Association of Realtors came out and said, hey, we need a course on disasters. And I said, nobody gets that but me. Yeah. So I wrote the first course and it went live on in 2020. And I did a little 3-hour course and it turned into a whole certification because there was so much more that needed to be said. And I founded the nonprofit because this really fits into people want to give back and they want to work with organizations that have a cause, a social cause of some kind. And so I formed a nonprofit to be able to do just exactly that and help 30 million people.
That's incredible. And, I went through the certification with you. Of course, it was a little ironic that you brought that out in 2020, considering that was the year of, COVID and pandemic. And I thought, well, that's kind of crazy. But I went through the course with you. It's an extraordinary course. Of course, have your book. The book is available on Amazon. We'll also post a link to it in the show notes today. But, you know, I think you're absolutely right. I think people really believe that they'll be okay when the time comes and how unprepared they really are. I mean, I feel the exact same way. I don't feel like I'm even prepared enough, and I've been through your course. And I started thinking about that, and I was like, because so, for me, for an example, I live in the country. And
Mm.
one thing a lot of people don't think about is we're on a well. And when power goes out, which we've had a few of those over the last few years here in California, PG&E, the power goes out, we don't have water. And so we don't have access to water. And you don't think about that until all of a sudden the
You
power
don't
goes,
have
turn the water on or flush the toilet or draw a bath and you have no water. And so that's just a minor thing in comparison to all the other stuff that's going on. But if you're not thinking about any of that or prepared for any of that, it can be devastating.
I just spoke at the National Natural Disaster Expo in Anaheim, and I talked about doing well by doing good because I think it's very important that we understand that there is a gift and an opportunity in any disaster, in any crisis in our lives. And one thing that I say over and over again is that we may think that we have some kind of preparation. Maybe in our head, we've got, where's the water at and where's the food at, and we might have a flashlight. But in reality, what happens is your mind goes blank when it actually happens,
Yeah.
right? When the electricity goes out and you don't have any water, all of a sudden you go, oh my God, I didn't
Yeah.
think about that, right? But your mind goes blank and you cannot think, which is why resiliency is so critically important. And you only get resilient through preparation. That's the
Yeah.
only way. And a lot of people think it's overwhelming, but you start with the basic stuff and you can build from there. It doesn't have to be done overnight. We don't have to go out and have our entire emergency kits in place if overnight. We can do that piece by piece. So we start with the most critical stuff, water being one of them. So what have you learned from the electricity going out and no water?
Well, I learned that you have to have plenty of water on hand. But here's an interesting tip that I never thought about. I saw it on TikTok. I'm a canner. I enjoy canning, fruits and vegetables. And I have tons of empty jars in my garage waiting for me to can and put stuff in. And some gal on TikTok said, those jars are already sitting empty. Go fill them all up with water.
Ah, brilliant.
That's what I said. How brilliant is that? She goes, you can have all those empty canning jars sitting in your garage full of water. In an emergency, you can always boil it or do, whatever you need to do, but they're already sitting empty. Like how many tubs and buckets and things do you have that are sitting around that, you could fill with water just to make sure you have extra water?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that is I'm going to put that in my course, Marguerite.
Yeah. Isn't that a great tip? Surprised by that. Of course, I haven't done it yet, but I will be doing it when I get back from.
Therein lies the problem.
Yes. Yes. Action is a key word there. Yeah.
Totally, totally. Which is why with the nonprofit, I'm doing these initiatives. My son, when he was 10 years old, he came home with a can of baking soda because he had visited a fire department. And he goes, Mom, why isn't this by your stove for a grease fire? I've had baking soda by my stove ever since. And
Wow.
kids make the best salespeople.
Oh, don't
So
they though? Yeah.
my goal is the Kits for Kids is all about providing go kits that go inside their backpacks. They're little tiny things. But then really the goal is to sell the parents on what they need to have to be prepared. And if you start with the
Absolutely.
kid, you're going to get their hearts, right?
Yes.
So I have an ulterior motive for what I'm doing.
Well, give us a little bit of insight. So, well, let's use our location. So I'm here in California, and one of the big issues we have are fires. So, what types of things do you or should you have prepared in the event that something happens with a fire? Because what always panics me, I was actually born in Paradise, California.
Oh, were you really?
Yes, and grew up there. And so it was obviously heartbreaking when Paradise was literally 95% of the entire town was burned to the ground. And those people had seconds to get out. Like not even an hour or two to think about it. They had seconds to grab themselves and anything they could grab on the way out the door and get out. And so how do you even start to prepare for something like that?
It really boils down to coming up with a plan. And that's where the action, being able to get people to take action. There were actually cars in Paradise that the families were in the cars and they never made it out of their driveway.
Oh, heartbreaking.
And and the thing about a fire is it can turn on a dime. Our mutual friend Sarah, lives in Malibu, and she was born and raised there, and her mother lived in the family home still, and she lived there. Her office had like 30 agents in Malibu, real estate agents, and the fire was going this way. So her family house burned down, and several of her agents had damaged or destroyed homes. But the fire was going this way, and they were this way. So she and her husband thought they were okay. And in the middle of the night, they got a knock on the door saying, "You have 15 minutes to get out." And she took the first half of that time spinning around trying to figure out what to take. And they got
Yeah.
to the shelter, and she had, at her time, her little girls were like 2 and 4 or something like that. They were young. And she brought nothing for her kids. So I always tell that story because I think that just explains how important it is for us to think ahead of time. You can't wait. Like people say, well, I'm going to grab this and I'm going to grab that. And that's great if you have the time to grab it. But a fire travels over 100 to 150 miles per hour. It does, and anything in its path, you can't control it, right? So it's like you need to have it done. And when you're done, what's interesting is you won't panic anymore. You won't be afraid anymore because you have your kid. It's in the garage where you run out the door or by the front door or wherever you keep in the closet, hall closet, wherever you keep it, and you grab it and you go. And the things that are important that people don't think about to put in that bag are, first of all, cash. People don't think about money. But what happens, like you said, the electricity goes out, you don't have water. Well,
Yeah.
if electricity is out and you can't get gas because the gas station doesn't have a generator, or you can't go to the store, you can't pay for a room because they don't have a generator. And people are starting to think about that now, but there's still plenty of places where you need to have cash. And that's number one. And that's something that even FEMA in their messages don't talk about. The second thing is obviously you need to have water, and you need to have food. But you also need to make sure you have a can opener, right? Because that's something that people don't think about. You need to look at what is in your area. Like, for example, you in the country and in a fire area. What have you done to protect around your home, to do preventative, and what have you been able to change it's non-wood, it's not going to burn easily, fire retardant siding, types of decks that are made out of some of the type of product besides wood, not having anything attached to your house, having a clear zone. I think in California, it's actually required you have 100-foot around your space that is low. It's low maintenance, low, what's the word? Burnability, I guess you would call it. So, but having those things in your kit. And the other thing that's really important that people don't think about, one of the most heartbreaking things when I was a FEMA inspector is people losing something that was an heirloom that was cherished.
Oh, yeah.
The best example of that, my first disaster was Northridge earthquake. And after that, I was up in Central California, and I drove up to this house. It was an elderly man. He was in probably his mid 80s. He was quite elderly, and he's holding what looks like a bunch of wood. And I got out of my car and introduced myself, and I said, "How can I help you?" And he's in tears. And he said, "This was my grandfather's toolbox." And it was just pieces of wood. So if you have something like pictures, or if you have pictures, for God's sakes, get them on the cloud. Don't wait for something, because it's heartbreaking when you see those albums and you can't even open them up anymore because of the water damage. Because if there's a fire, there's going to be water damage, right? So thinking about those kinds of things. And then in my book, When the Unthinkable Happens, Be Prepared,
Yes.
Be Ready, there is a list, and you can go online and get a list of what you need to have. But you want to look at the types of risk factors you have. Like with you, it's fires and flooding and water damage. Those would be the main, and earthquakes.
Well, and honestly, our virtual assistants that we have that help with us are in the Philippines, where they have typhoons and, hurricanes. They have major water, issues out there. So this is actually great information for them to share. You're going to have to get your book printed in their language there, Connie.
Absolutely. Well, one of the things that I talk about, and at the California Association, their big expo in October, the big buzz, and I went to a couple of meetings, was about fires and insurance, because insurance is now becoming a huge issue. In 2021, CoreLogic came out, 1 in 10 homes, 1 in 10 in this country are either going to be damaged or destroyed by some type of natural disaster. 1 in 10. 10% of all homes in this country, 99% of all counties in this country are at risk for flooding.
Well, you know what else, Connie, that came up in the Paradise fires is because that town was primarily elderly, 60% of it was retirement. And many of those people had paid off their homes and then didn't pay for their insurance because either they couldn't afford it or they didn't think it would be needed. So
Yeah.
some of those people lost everything tragically.
Well, there's a lot of insurance companies. So the reinsurers that provide the support for the insurance companies to be able to cover are saying 23% of these homes are going to become uninsurable. What does that do to the home buyer? What does that do to the seller? What does that do to the real estate industry, the mortgage industry, the title industry? It's going to have an enormous effect. And if you, like, I live in Nevada, and it's one of the areas that has a fairly low risk for different types of disasters. We have them, but we're pretty low risk. So people think, oh, well, I live in Nevada, so it's not going to affect me. Guess what? Even if you don't believe in climate change, your insurance company does, because they're paying the bills.
Yeah.
And you are going to be affected through your insurance premiums. And there's so many places now where people can't afford. The people that went through Hurricane just last a couple weeks ago, some of those people received their cancellation notices the day before the hurricane hit, the day before. And for a whole other reason, but the insurance companies are pulling out. Like Paradise, 2 insurance companies they filed bankruptcy because
Well, I know that here, so I live in Northern California, and we've had a few fires in the last few years, and there are parts like Grass Valley and Forest Hill and some of those areas up in the mountains. You can't get insurance. You have to get on the state program and get some type of supplement. But I have seen insurance go from $1,500 a year to $10,000 a year.
yeah, and you're
Which
seeing that
now people can't, they obviously, what are they going to do? I mean, that's that could be over $1,000 a month, just for insurance. What are they going to do?
Exactly. Well, it's a serious problem, which is why it's so important that we get climate change under control. Whether you believe it's man-made or whether you don't does not matter. The bottom line is I always talk about when I was a FEMA inspector, I was addicted. I was physically addicted to the job. I would come home after a disaster and I'd get on the Weather Channel to see where I was going to go next. Now I could pick and choose what part of the country I want to go work in.
Yeah.
That's how different it is.
Right.
And like tornadoes have tripled in the last 2 years, 3 years. Then you start talking about man-made, and let's not even go down the pandemic role. That just, cyber attacks and power outages, and as you are experiencing because of the electrical stuff.
Right.
All of those kinds of things are going to affect all of us.
Yeah.
And the numbers and the FAIR program, which is backed by taxpayers, which is the kind of insurance that these people are getting. Okay, so you have the taxpayers backing the FAIR program. You have the taxpayers backing FEMA when something happens. Then you have the taxpayers that back Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. When you start taking a look at that and the billions and billions of dollars that taxpayers are supporting, no wonder we don't have money to go do something good, right?
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter whether you buy into climate change or not. It's here, it's real. Whether we're doing it on purpose or whether we're not does not matter. The bottom line is we need to do everything we can to change that and to reduce our carbon footprint.
So we talked a little bit about this earlier, but I guess I really want to help people understand a little bit more about what is most important for them to be prepared. I mean, you talked about money, you talked about, having important documents. What else is
I think the most important thing is taking a look at your situation. Are you married? Do you have kids? Are you taking care of your elderly or disabled? All of those kinds of things. So that's the first thing you look at is, okay, what is my dynamic? And then what are the risk factors? And when you look at those risk factors, you look at, okay, what do I need to have to protect myself? So if you're worried about fires, you're going to need to make sure that you have some kind of a fire retardant blanket or for each person. And in case you do get stuck, you need to have extra cell phones that they're not battery operated. They are solar or something like that, because you need to be able to communicate. I know a person in Houston, Texas, that she went almost 24 hours without talking to her kids that were at school. So having the logistics and having the plans in place. Okay, if I have to escape, like for you, Marguerite, if you have to escape, do you have 2 routes you can escape from? Not just one, but 2. If you have a home and it's a 2-story home, and your kids are at one end of the house and you're at the other, what do you need to do to make sure those kids can get out on their own? Because if you can't get to them to help them, what are they going to do? So you need to, the very first thing you do is you look at your situation. If you're elderly, you're not going to move. I certainly don't move as fast as I used to. You need to have plans and say, okay, I need to be able to get out of my house and I need to be able to get in my car and get out. So I need to have everything set up. So you look at your situation first, and all of this could be done ahead. Your emergency kit really is pretty fundamental. It's a whistle in case you get, after an earthquake or something like that, and you're under rubble. You need to have people be able to hear you. In my Go kits, the Go kits that I'm designing to go in the backpacks, they're going to be about 8 inches long and about 2.5 inches in diameter. And they're going to have a tracker on the outside. So the parents and then somebody outside of the home, like their grandparents or something like that, live somewhere else, can track where the kid is. So if they
That's
get,
brilliant.
yes, and then there's a recording so they can record, tell the kid to be calm. If the cell towers are working, you can actually have a two-way conversation with them. Inside is a whistle. There is a Mylar blanket. There is a pouch of water and I'm looking at the nutrition bars right now. There is an emergency light that lights for 12 hours. And I'm looking into, like, you know how the skiers have the heating for their hands or I'm looking into finding small ones to go inside of that. All the emergency information and the instructions in pictures. So the kids can look at it and see, okay, this is what I need to do. So all those things are going to go inside of this, and it's going to go in the bottom of the backpack. So because the kids, they take their backpacks everywhere, right? So wherever they are, they have it. That's the other thing. People think, oh, well, they're at school and they've got that emergency kit at school. Well, some schools don't have that. And if they do, they probably don't have what's in this little Go kit.
Right.
And then you can take that little Go kit and put it in the emergency kit that has the extra clothes, that has the extra food, that has a game or a toy for your kids. If you look at your children, if you have children, you look at them and say, what do I want to have, make sure they have? It's pretty easy to turn around and say, oh, well, I guess maybe I should have that too. So looking at your family situation first, and then saying, oh, and then having duplicates in the cloud of all of your important papers, your birth certificate, your driver's license, your passport, your insurance papers, all of those kinds of things, having copies in the cloud so that you can, you need to have them with you, that you put them in the pack to the emergency kit, but having those copies in the cloud, that way that they're safe.
Well, and I have a program that I use called RoboForms. There's ones just like it, LastPass and all those, that has safe notes. So like my attorney and my bookkeeper have my master password. And in that RoboForms program is everything, all social security numbers, passport numbers, banking information, anything and everything that if I needed to, and I can get to it from a cell phone or any website. So that's, I think, critical these days.
Really critical. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, and I know there's some people out there that are kind of fearful of having everything in one place like that. There's some mainly older people,
Right.
Let's face it, us baby boomers. We sometimes are a little stubborn, but yes, having somebody outside of your area that is a communication point, like your accountant or your attorney, having them be a communication point, and having a family member or a friend. Like my best friend lives in Atlanta, Georgia. If something happened in Las Vegas, I could have everybody call Atlanta, Georgia, and I would stay in contact with her.
Well, so here's something too, Connie, that I did not think about, and this might be in your book. I have to look. My cell phone went dead the other day for some bizarre reason. For 4 hours, it went dead. And in the old days, we knew everybody's phone numbers. Now, I didn't know anybody's phone number but my husband's. And I thought, oh my goodness, like, what would I do? Like, I don't know anybody's phone numbers. And so I'm sure that there's something in the packet where you need to like actually have that written down or laminated or something.
I
With
actually have an
phone number.
emergency contact form. As a matter of fact, I will email it to you and you can put it on you can share
Yeah.
it, because yes, it's critically, and to make sure, here's the other thing. So one of the things I talk about in the book is you need to look at this.
Yeah.
It's not something that you build. Like, I just talked to somebody and they said that they had some kind of food in their emergency. They actually had an emergency kit, which is rare all in its own, but they had some food that had been in there for like 4 or 5 years and it exploded. You don't put something in and not look at it. So every year you need to look at it and say, okay, the phone numbers need to be updated. Or if you get a new phone number for somebody, make sure you update it. And so that you have phone numbers that you can reach out. Yeah. And actually, You just gave me a really good idea. I need to download my entire contact list into an Excel file and store it with my paper. That's
Yeah.
a really good idea. That way
Yeah,
you
that's
can
a
fill
great
this
idea.
out. Yeah.
Well, help me understand this. I know you have the certification program and some of that now. How, as an industry, like as a real estate industry, how can we get this out to more people? Are you still doing the certification
I'm
course
still doing
right
the
now?
certification, but I'm taking a little bit different approach because I'm trying to help 30 million people. And what I discovered with the way I was doing it is getting a few people to get certified and then getting them to get out there to the communities. I needed more involvement, which is one of the reasons I formed the nonprofit. Well, I think one of the you asked me about the real estate community and how they can participate.
Yes.
And there's a couple ways. First of all, I really want the real estate community to be a part of the Kits for Kids because that gives you an opportunity to be out in the community, talk to the parents. It becomes a referral source for you. As a community leader, who are they going to contact? They're not going to contact somebody else that they don't know. They're going to talk to somebody that is wanting to help them and give back.
Yes.
So the book is a part of that. So you can put your logo on the book and you can add a chapter to the book and be able to give that out as gifts or resell it. I sell it to the people for wholesale pricing. And then just being out in the community, once you become certified, you can actually, I provide you with ongoing education. It's all going to be on the website. I'm just redoing the website, by the way. So the new website is called bepreparedbeready.org.
Oh, I like it.
And all that training, everything is going to be transferred over to the nonprofit. And inside of that, it's in the works right now. So it should be done in another week or so.
That's amazing. Well, I know that two things I'm going to be talking to my team right after this call because I really want to hold one of these classes, a couple of them in our community, and of course, have your books available for our clients because I just know how important it is. Like I said, having watched what happened with the Paradise fires, and then here in our community, we've had several major fires close by, including the one near Tahoe and Grass Valley, Nevada City, and Forest Hill area. So it's been rough. And again, as I mentioned earlier, some of our helpers, our virtual assistants in the Philippines, they're dealing with this on a regular basis.
Oh, totally.
And
On a regular basis.
to be able to educate not only us but them and your 30 million around the world, there's so much that needs to be done, so much work that needs to be done. I
Well,
know that I am definitely committed. It's on my plan for next year to I would like to have a couple of these workshops in our local community, so I'm
oh,
excited about that.
definitely. Well, I'm looking forward to working with you on it because it is really important. And people are talking a lot about sustainability. Well, it's important we get to sustainability, but in the meantime, the disasters are going to become more intense. The facts are incredible what's happened in 2021 and 2020, not counting the pandemic. The numbers are just they've tripled in tornadoes. The drought went all the way across the country. The only part that wasn't in a drought was in the Northeast last year. I mean, it's been one thing. We had a hurricane, for God's sakes, in November.
Yeah.
That has only happened one other time in like 1985, and it was the very beginning of November. I mean, that's unheard of. And look at what the damage that these hurricanes are doing. Even if, like, the Hurricane Nicole was it was a Category 1, but the amount of rain and stuff that it dumped and the amount of destruction that it had. And then you look at Nevada and California with the drought. What are we going to do? The Lake Mead is where it was when it was built in 1933. It's insane. So if we think we're not going to be touched by disasters, you need to think again. One
How
way or
can how can we get this more into the schools? It just feels like the schools are not getting the kids prepared. And like you said,
well,
if we can get through, the kids are going to go home to their parents, and it's a combination of things.
that's absolutely right. Well, I think the Kits for Kids is the one way to do it because we're going to go to the schools. We also have somebody who wants to go to the military base to educate the kids. And again, if we get the little Go Kits, if we get those donated to the schools, then we have an emergency kit that the kid has at home that has all the other stuff that they need to have, like their clothing and all of that kind of stuff. That's a different list. This is just fundamental where it's going to be with them all the time. And
So
if we can get the schools to go along with this, and they're very open to it, they're very open. And so I think that's going to be the way. I don't think it's a better way than getting through the kids. And the second initiative is going to be Kits for Pets. Maybe pets will be bigger than Kits for Kids. I don't know.
yeah, help me understand a little bit about what the nonprofit part of it is doing. Are people able to donate to buy these kits?
Yes,
or
so
what is it you're planning on doing with that?
I'm launching. I was hoping to have it all launched on November 29th, which is Giving Tuesday. It's probably going to be the week after that just because of all the conventions and stuff that I did. But I want a soft launch where I'm asking for donations, and I'm looking for, if anybody out there would like to be a partner with me, I'm looking for a couple of large, either regional or national partners that could benefit by reaching out to the real estate community and the insurance industry. I see those as going hand in hand and helping me put together these initiatives in these different communities. Like, for example, in your community, being able to put together to go to the schools, and what do we need to make that happen? So having volunteers, I'm looking for volunteers. I'm looking for people that want to be a part of something that's really big and really important.
Yeah.
But yeah, I
So
agree with you. The schools
so
and the kids are
incredibly
the
important.
order.
Well, I know that just in talking to you again and reconnecting has been great. And I am committed, and my team is listening in the background here on what we can do to put some events together next year and see what we can do to get into our local community schools. Because I agree, I think that this is vitally important, and we've just got to get this out there. And I'm even right now, I'm getting ready to take off for a week on vacation, and I'm thinking I'm not really that prepared, to leave my whole house, So I know that when I get back, priority number one is going to be getting these kits together and getting this stuff together for me and my family. I just think it's
You know what we could
important.
do, Marguerite, is we could tape you getting prepared. I could help you, and we could videotape it as a way of doing it. That would be fun.
Oh, that would be great. Yeah. And my team would love that because they're always harassing me to get video for them that they can put on social media. So that
There
would
you
make me
go.
very happy. I can see him grinning behind the scenes. But, most definitely. Well, I'm so grateful that you're here today. And I really am looking forward to connecting with you again before the end of the year to see what we can do to get some stuff on the agenda. I'm definitely going to order some branded books. So we'll get that done. And for anyone who's listening that is interested in, number one, learning about the certification. If you're not in the real estate industry and you're listening, you can also go to the website, you can order her book on Amazon. It's available on Amazon.
And
We'll
you can
have
reach out to me if you want information about. I have a book available digitally, well, and that'll be on the website, bepreparedbeready.org.
There you go. So you can get it digitally, you can get paper, you can get access to the information. But if you are not prepared for your family, which I am not, so I'm committing right now to getting my family prepared, I really encourage you to get to her website, check it out, get the details. If you're in the real estate community and you have any interest in getting certified, again, you can go to her website and get that information. And I'm happy to help however I can in putting some events together to educate the public, because that's really what we need to do. And as a community, as a real estate industry, I think that's something we need to commit to.
Absolutely. Listen, I need to let you know my battery is running low.
That's okay. We're wrapping up. So thank you so much for being here with us today, Coni. I'm super grateful for your friendship and your time. And I look forward to getting some of this out there to the public and seeing what we can do to get people more educated to work towards that 30 million person goal.
Thank you. Well, I look forward to working with you next year, and I think it's going to be a great year. And I really appreciate your support and having me on. Thank you.
Of course. Thank you for being a guest today.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us on the Real Estate Real World, where we get to talk to all the cool people and we get to also make sure that we are doing what we can to give back to our community. Thank you for joining us today. Be sure to share on all your social media and follow us on all the places that you can. Thanks so much for joining us today, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us today on Real Estate Real World, where we talk with masters and leaders in real estate and beyond on how we can raise the bar in our industry. Please subscribe over on iTunes. And while you're there, be sure to give us a review. Your reviews encourage us and help others find our podcast. For show notes and hot topics on what's going on right now in our real estate industry, hop on over to www.realestaterealworld.com and add your name to our email. Thanks again for listening. And go out there, be a part of the elite masterclass in raising the bar on the real estate industry.